The clinic was full of people, but somehow there was no room for her. The crying didn't echo loudly, yet it cut through the air like something fragile breaking. Emily Carter stood at the counter with her baby pressed against her chest. The fluorescent lights above flickered just enough to make everything feel colder. Her daughter's breath came in short, uneven bursts. Each one felt like a countdown. Emily couldn't stop. "I'm sorry," the receptionist said without looking up. "We require payment up front." The words were practiced and clean. They landed heavier than they sounded. Emily nodded once. Her fingers tightened around the thin blanket wrapped around her baby. She had counted the money 3 times in the parking lot. $47 and some coins. Not even close. "She's having trouble breathing," Emily said softly. Her voice didn't shake. That surprised her. "We can't admit her without insurance or deposit." The woman's tone stayed even. A man behind Emily sighed loudly. Someone else shifted in their seat. The room felt smaller with every second. Emily glanced down at her daughter. Tiny lips parted. A weak sound escaped. Not a full cry anymore. That scared her more. She swallowed hard and nodded again. "Okay," she whispered. She stepped aside. No one stopped her. No one asked another question. The automatic doors slid open with a quiet hiss as she walked out. The late afternoon air hit her face. It was warmer outside, but it didn't help. She adjusted her hold gently. "Hey, baby," she murmured. "I'm right here." Her voice softened in a way she reserved only for moments like this. Behind her, footsteps approached. Slow and steady. Not rushed. Not hesitant. "Excuse me." The voice was calm. Low. It didn't carry urgency, but it carried something else. Emily turned halfway. A man stood a few feet away. Early 40s. Dark suit. No tie. His presence didn't demand attention, but somehow it held it anyway. "Is she okay?" he asked. His eyes weren't on Emily. They were on the baby. Careful. Observing. Emily instinctively shifted back half a step. "We're fine," she said. The lie came easily. She had practiced it too many times. The man didn't argue. He didn't step closer. He simply nodded once. "She needs a doctor," he said quietly. Not a question. Not an accusation. Just a fact placed gently between them. Emily looked away. No." Her voice dropped this time. Barely there. For a second, neither of them spoke. Cars passed in the distance. A siren echoed faintly somewhere across town. Life kept moving. It always did. The man reached into his jacket pocket. Slow. Deliberate. He pulled out a simple card. White. No gold edges. No embossed name. He held it out, but didn't push it toward her. "Call this number," he said. "They'll be expecting you." Emily hesitated. Her eyes flicked from the card to his face. There was no pressure in his expression. No hint of obligation. Just quiet certainty. "I can't afford," she started. "You don't have to explain," he interrupted gently. Not dismissive. Just firm enough to stop the thought. Emily stared at the card again. Her baby let out a weak breath against her collarbone. That sound made the decision for her. She reached out slowly and took it. The paper felt ordinary. Too ordinary for what he implied. "Why are you helping me?" she asked before she could stop herself. The man paused for a brief second. A flicker of something passed through his eyes. Not pity. Not pride. Something quieter. "Because someone once helped me," he said. Simple. Final. He gave a small nod. Then he turned and walked back toward the clinic without another word. Emily stood there holding the card. The number stared back at her. Plain black ink. Nothing special. Except it was the only thing she had left. She pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. The screen lit up against the fading daylight. She dialed before doubt could catch up. It rang once. Then twice. On the third ring, someone answered. "This is Dr. Lawson's private line," a calm voice said. "We've been expecting your call, Miss Carter." Emily froze. Her heart skipped hard enough to hurt. She hadn't given her name. Not to anyone. Emily did not realize she was holding her breath until it finally escaped in a shaky exhale. Her fingers tightened around the phone as if it might disappear. "You have the wrong person," she said quickly. "I did not give my name." There was a brief pause on the other end. Not confusion. Not hesitation. Just quiet patience. "You were given the number by Mr. Hayes," the voice replied. "That is enough for us." Emily's chest rose sharply. The name meant nothing to her. But the certainty in that voice did. She looked down at her daughter again. The tiny rise and fall of her chest seemed weaker now. Time felt thinner. "Where do I go?" Emily asked. Her voice was steadier this time. "We have a private clinic 15 minutes from your location," the voice said. I will send the address to your phone now. Please come immediately. The doctor is already preparing. Emily's screen lit up with a new message before she could respond. An address appeared. Clean. Precise. No room for doubt. I do not have a car, she said quietly. Another pause. Shorter this time. Step to the curb, the voice instructed. A driver will arrive in less than 3 minutes. The call ended gently. No goodbye. No instructions repeated. Just trust that she would follow. Emily lowered the phone slowly. Her heart was racing now. Not from fear. From something else she had not felt in a long time. Possibility. She stepped toward the curb as told. The city noise surrounded her again. Cars passed. People walked by without noticing her. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. A black sedan pulled up in front of her almost silently. The door opened before she could react. A man in a dark suit stepped out. Miss Carter, he said with a polite nod. Not a question, a confirmation. Emily hesitated for half a second. Then she nodded. He opened the back door for her. She climbed in carefully, keeping her daughter close. The interior smelled faintly of leather and something clean. The kind of quiet that felt expensive. The door closed with a soft click. The car moved immediately. No wasted motion. No unnecessary words. Emily looked out the window as buildings blurred past. Her mind tried to catch up with what was happening. 15 minutes ago, she had been turned away like she did not belong. Now, someone she had never met had rearranged the world around her. She looked down again. Hang on, she whispered. Just a little longer. The car stopped in front of a building she had never noticed before. It did not look like a hospital. No crowded entrance. No long lines. Just glass doors in quiet order. The driver opened her door. They are waiting, he said simply. Emily stepped out. The moment her feet touched the ground, the doors opened from inside. Hey. Nurse approached quickly but without panic. Emily, she said gently. The way she said her name made it feel like she had always known it. Come with me. Emily followed without question. The hallway was bright but warm. Not harsh like the clinic she had just left. The air felt different here. Calm. Intentional. A doctor stood at the end of the hall. Mid-50s. Calm eyes. Ready hands. I am Dr. Lawson, he said. Let us take care of her. Emily hesitated for only a second before stepping forward. She let the nurse guide her. She let the doctor take over. Not because she had no choice, but because for the first time that day, she believed someone truly could help. As they moved deeper into the clinic, Emily glanced back once. The doors had already closed behind her. The outside world felt far away now, like something she had survived, not something she was still trapped in. The door closed softly behind them, but Emily still felt the echo of it in her chest. Everything inside the clinic moved with quiet precision. No raised voices. No rushed footsteps. Just people who seemed to already know what needed to be done. The nurse guided her into a bright room filled with soft white light. Machines hummed gently in the background. Nothing sounded alarming. That alone made Emily's shoulders loosen just slightly. You can place her here, the nurse said, gesturing toward a small bed. Emily hesitated for a fraction of a second. Letting go felt unnatural. Then she carefully laid her daughter down. The moment her arms were empty, the weight of everything hit her all at once. She stepped back. Her hands hovered in the air like she did not know where to put them. Dr. Lawson moved closer without hesitation. His expression remained calm but focused. We are going to run a quick assessment, he said. She is in the right place now. Emily nodded, even though she was not sure she believed it yet. She watched every movement, every small adjustment. The doctor listened to the baby's breathing. The nurse prepared equipment with practiced ease. No one wasted time. No one looked unsure. Minutes passed, but felt longer. Emily's eyes stayed locked on her daughter's tiny chest rising and falling. Each breath still sounded strained, but something about the room made it feel less fragile. Less alone. Her oxygen levels are low, the doctor said quietly. We will support her breathing and monitor closely. The words should have scared her. Instead, they grounded her. It was the first clear answer she had received all day. A small mask was placed gently over the baby's face. The machine adjusted with a soft click. The rhythm of her breathing began to change. Subtle at first, then steadier. Emily felt her knees weaken. She reached for the edge of a nearby chair and sat down slowly. The tension in her body did not disappear. It shifted, turned into something quieter, something watchful. You did the right thing bringing her here, the nurse said softly. Emily looked up. Her eyes filled, but she blinked the tears away before they could fall. I almost did not make it, she admitted. Her voice cracked at the end despite her effort to hold it steady. The nurse gave a small, understanding nod. No pity, just recognition. Across the room, Dr. Lawson checked the monitor again. His movements remained measured. Nothing rushed. Nothing careless. She is responding, he said after a moment. Emily exhaled sharply. That single sentence carried more weight than anything else she had heard. She leaned forward slightly, her gaze never leaving her daughter. The color in the baby's face seemed different now. Not perfect, but better. Enough to notice. Enough to hope. Emily pressed her lips together. She had learned not to trust hope too easily. It could disappear without warning. But this felt different. It felt earned. After a few more minutes, the doctor stepped back. We will keep her under observation, he said. She needs rest and careful monitoring. You can stay with her. Emily nodded again. This time she meant it. She moved closer to the bed and gently touched her daughter's tiny hand. Warm. Still warm. That was enough. For now. As the room settled into a steady rhythm, Emily's mind finally caught up with everything that had happened. The clinic that turned her away. The man who appeared without warning. The number that opened doors she did not know existed. None of it made sense. Not yet. But one truth stood clear above the rest. Someone had seen her at her lowest moment. And instead of looking away, he had chosen to act. The steady rhythm of the monitor filled the room like a quiet promise that had not existed before. Emily sat beside the small bed with her hand resting gently over her daughter's fingers. She did not move much. She was afraid that even a small shift might break the fragile calm that had settled in. Minutes turned into something softer. Not quite peace, but no longer panic. The nurse adjusted a setting on the machine and gave Emily a small, reassuring glance before stepping out. The room grew quieter after that. Just the soft hum of controlled air and the faint beeping that now sounded less urgent. Emily leaned closer. You are doing so good, she whispered. Her voice carried warmth now instead of fear. The baby's breathing had evened out enough to notice. Not perfect, but no longer fighting for every breath. That alone felt like a miracle Emily had not dared to expect. A gentle knock came at the door. It opened before she could respond. Dr. Lawson stepped back in, holding a tablet in one hand. His expression remained calm, but there was something lighter in his eyes. She is stabilizing well, he said. Her lungs needed support, but she is responding exactly how we hoped. Emily let out a breath she did not realize she had been holding again. Is she going to be okay? She asked. This time her voice did not break. It held on to something steadier. The doctor paused for a moment before answering. Not hesitation. Care. She will need monitoring for a few hours, he said. But I expect a full recovery. The words settled into the room slowly. Emily closed her eyes for a brief second. Just enough to let that truth reach somewhere deeper inside her. When she opened them again, everything looked the same. But it felt different. Lighter. She nodded. Thank you, she said quietly. The doctor gave a small nod in return. No grand gesture. Just quiet acknowledgement. Someone made sure you got here in time, he added before turning toward the door. Emily looked up at that. Mr. Hayes? She asked. The name felt unfamiliar on her tongue. Dr. Lawson paused with his hand on the door. Yes, he said simply. Then he stepped out, leaving the door slightly open behind him. Emily sat there for a moment, letting the silence return. The name echoed in her mind. Hayes. She had heard it once. Only once. Yet it had opened everything. She glanced down at her daughter again. The tiny hand curled slightly around her finger now. That small movement sent a wave of emotion through her chest. Real. Alive. Safe. Emily swallowed hard and leaned forward, resting her forehead lightly near the edge of the bed. She did not cry. Not yet. She just stayed there, breathing in sync with the soft rhythm of the machine. Time passed without pressure. For the first time that day, she was not counting seconds. Another sound broke the quiet. Soft footsteps in the hallway. Slower than before. Deliberate. Emily lifted her head slightly. The door moved just a little more open. A shadow appeared first. Then the man stepped inside. The same calm presence. The same quiet confidence. Daniel Hayes stood near the doorway, not crossing fully into the room. As if he did not want to disturb what had been restored. Emily straightened slowly in her chair. Her hand remained on her daughter's. She looked at him carefully now, not as a stranger anymore, but as the reason her child was still breathing this way. You knew my name, she said softly. It was not an accusation. It was something closer to wonder. Daniel did not answer immediately. His gaze moved briefly to the child, then back to Emily. I needed to make sure they were ready for you, he said. Simple. Direct. No explanation beyond that. Emily studied his face, trying to understand something that did not follow the rules she knew. Why? She asked again. This time quieter. Not demanding. Just searching. Daniel stepped one pace closer, still keeping a respectful distance. Because no one should be turned away when it matters most, he said. His voice did not rise. It did not need to. Emily looked down at her daughter, then back at him. The answer was not complicated, but it carried more weight than anything else she had heard all day. And for the first time, she believed it. Emily held his gaze for a moment longer than she intended. There was no urgency in his expression, no expectation of gratitude. That unsettled her more than anything else. People usually wanted something in return. Even kindness came with a cost she had learned to anticipate. But Daniel Hayes stood there as if nothing needed to be said beyond what had already been done. Emily looked back down at her daughter. The small rise and fall of her chest continued in a steady rhythm. The soft machine beside her hummed like a quiet guardian. She brushed her thumb gently across the baby's tiny hand. Her name is Lily, Emily said after a moment. Her voice was calm now, grounded in something real. Daniel nodded once. His eyes softened slightly as he looked at the child again. She is strong, he said, not as comfort, as observation. Emily let out a small breath that almost sounded like a laugh. She has to be, she replied. I do not give her much of a choice. There was a trace of honesty in that sentence that lingered between them. Daniel took another step into the room, still careful not to intrude on the space Emily had claimed beside the bed. You have done more than enough, he said quietly. Emily shook her head. Not today, she answered. Her eyes moved briefly toward him. Today I almost failed her. The words came out softer than she expected. Not heavy, just true. Daniel did not respond right away. He seemed to consider her words instead of correcting them. You brought her here, he said finally. That is not failure. Emily held on to that sentence. She did not fully accept it, but she did not reject it either. It stayed somewhere in between. A gentle knock interrupted the moment. The nurse stepped in with a small update sheet in her hand. Her oxygen levels are improving steadily, she said. We will continue monitoring, but she is doing very well. Emily nodded in gratitude. This time the words did not feel forced. Thank you, she said again. The nurse smiled and stepped back out, closing the door quietly behind her. The room returned to its calm rhythm. Emily shifted slightly in her chair. The tension in her shoulders had eased enough for her to notice the exhaustion underneath. It settled into her bones now that the immediate fear had passed. Daniel seemed to notice without asking. There is a lounge down the hall, he said. You can rest for a few minutes. They will stay with her. Emily shook her head immediately. I am not leaving her, she said. The response was instinctive, firm. Daniel gave a small nod. He understood. Then at least sit back, he said. You do not have to. Hold everything up alone. Emily hesitated. Then she leaned back slightly in the chair. It was a small adjustment, but it felt significant. For the first time, she allowed herself to release even a fraction of the weight she had been carrying all day. Silence settled again. Not awkward, not empty, just present. Emily glanced at him once more. You did not have to stop, she said. You could have just kept walking. Daniel's gaze shifted briefly toward the window, then back to her. I almost did, he admitted. The honesty in his voice was quiet but unmistakable. Emily blinked at that. It was not the answer she expected. What changed your mind? She asked. Daniel looked at Lily again. The soft rise and fall of her breathing reflected in his eyes. She did, he said simply. Emily followed his gaze. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The room felt still in a different way now. Not fragile, not uncertain. Something steadier had taken its place. Emily tightened her hold on Lily's hand just slightly. Not out of fear anymore, out of something closer to relief. And for the first time that day, she allowed herself to believe that maybe things were not falling apart. Maybe, somehow, they were beginning to come back together. The room had grown quieter in a way that no longer felt temporary. The steady rhythm of the monitor blended into the background like a soft reassurance that did not need attention anymore. Emily remained seated beside Lily, her hand still resting gently over the small fingers that now curled with more strength than before. She noticed it in the smallest ways. The warmth in Lily's skin felt more certain. The rise of her chest no longer carried that fragile hesitation. It was not perfect, but it was enough to change everything. Daniel stood near the window now, his presence still calm but less distant. He did not interrupt the silence. He seemed to understand that this moment belonged to Emily and her daughter. After a while, Emily shifted slightly in her chair and looked toward him again. "How did you know where to send me?" she asked. Her voice carried quiet curiosity now instead of urgency. Daniel turned his head just enough to meet her gaze. "I have worked with Dr. Lawson for years," he said. "He runs this clinic privately. They do not turn people away when it matters." Emily absorbed that slowly. The idea felt unfamiliar. A place that chose care over cost. It sounded simple. It felt rare. "Then why does everyone not come here?" she asked. Daniel gave a faint, almost thoughtful expression. "Because most people do not know it exists," he answered. The truth in that sentence settled heavily in the space between them. Emily looked down again at Lily. "People like me," she said quietly. It was not a complaint. It was recognition. Daniel did not deny it. He stepped a little closer, still careful with the space he entered. "That does not make you invisible," he said. Emily let out a small breath. "It kind of does," she replied. There was no bitterness in her tone, just experience. For a moment, Daniel did not respond. His eyes moved to Lily again, watching the steady rhythm of her breathing. "Not today," he said finally. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Emily held on to them without realizing it. A soft sound came from the bed. Not a cry, just a small shift. Lily's fingers tightened slightly around Emily's hand. Emily leaned forward immediately. "Hey," she whispered gently. "I am right here." Lily's eyes fluttered open for a brief second. Just enough to see. Just enough to connect. Then they closed again as she settled back into a peaceful rhythm. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Not from fear this time. From relief that felt almost overwhelming. She blinked quickly, trying to steady herself. Daniel watched quietly from where he stood. He did not step closer. He did not speak. He simply allowed the moment to unfold. After a few seconds, Emily leaned back again, her hand still holding Lily's. "She is stronger than she looks," she said softly. Daniel nodded once. "So are you," he replied. Emily gave a faint shake of her head, but there was a hint of something softer in her expression now. Not resistance, not fully acceptance, something in between. The door opened gently once more. Dr. Lawson stepped in, checking the monitor with a practiced glance. "Her levels are stabilizing nicely," he said. "If this continues, she will not need extended support." Emily felt another layer of tension lift from her shoulders. "How long do we stay?" she asked. The doctor gave a small, reassuring smile. "A few more hours for observation," he said. "After that, she can go home." Home. The word felt distant just hours ago. Now it felt possible again. Dr. Lawson made a few notes and stepped back. "You are both doing well," he added before leaving the room once more. Emily sat there quietly after he left. The word lingered in her mind. Home. She looked around the room, then back at Lily, then briefly at Daniel. None of this had been part of her day. None of this had been expected. Yet somehow, everything had shifted in a way she could not ignore. She tightened her hold on Lily's hand just slightly and let out a slow breath. For the first time since morning, she was not bracing for something to go wrong. She was simply there, and that was enough. Time moved differently inside the room now. It no longer rushed past her in sharp, uneven pieces. It settled into something steady, something that allowed Emily to breathe without counting seconds. Lily slept quietly, her tiny chest rising and falling with a calm rhythm that felt almost unreal compared to earlier. Emily kept her hand close, not gripping anymore, just present. She traced small circles with her thumb against Lily's skin, grounding herself in the warmth she could feel. Across the room, Daniel had taken a seat near the window. He was no longer standing like a quiet observer. He seemed more at ease now, though he still carried that same composed stillness. Emily glanced at him briefly before looking back at Lily. "Do you do this often?" she asked after a while. Her voice was soft, but it carried genuine curiosity. Daniel looked up, considering the question before answering. "No," he said. "Not like this." Emily studied his face for a moment. There was no hesitation in his answer. No attempt to make himself seem more generous than he was. Just honesty. "Then why today?" she asked. Daniel leaned back slightly in his chair, his gaze drifting toward the soft light coming through the window. "Because I recognize that look," he said. Emily frowned slightly. "What look?" she asked. Daniel turned his attention back to her. "The moment when someone realizes they are about to be left alone," he said quietly. The words settled into the room with a weight that surprised her. Emily looked down at Lily again, her expression softening. "You have seen that before," she said. It was not a question. Daniel gave a small nod. "More than once," he replied. Emily did not ask for details. She did not need them. Something in his voice carried enough truth to fill in the spaces. The silence that followed was not empty. It held understanding. A soft sound came from Lily again, this time a small sigh as she shifted slightly. Emily leaned closer, instinctively adjusting the blanket. "You are getting stronger," she whispered. Her voice held quiet confidence now. Not forced, not fragile, just real. Daniel watched the interaction without interruption. There was something different in his expression now. Not distant, not guarded, just thoughtful. "She trusts you completely," he said after a moment. Emily gave a faint smile. "She does not have much of a choice," she replied. Daniel shook his head slightly. "It is more than that," he said. "Children know when they are safe." Emily paused at that. Her hand stilled for a brief second before continuing its gentle motion. She did not respond right away. The idea lingered in her mind. Safe. It was not a word she used often. Not for herself, but maybe for Lily. That mattered more. A quiet knock broke the moment again. The nurse stepped in, checking the monitor with a quick glance. "Everything looks stable," she said. "If this continues, we can begin preparing for discharge later this evening." Emily felt a small wave of relief move through her chest. It was not overwhelming this time, just steady, like everything else in the room had become. "Thank you," she said softly. The nurse nodded and stepped back out, leaving the door slightly open. Emily leaned back in her chair again, her body finally beginning to register the exhaustion she had been holding off all day. Her shoulders lowered. Her breathing slowed. She glanced at Daniel once more. "I do not even know how to thank you," she said. Daniel met her gaze without hesitation. "You do not need to," he replied. Emily frowned slightly. "That does not feel right," she said. Daniel gave a small, almost thoughtful smile. "Then take care of her," he said, nodding gently toward Lily. "That will be enough." Emily looked down at her daughter again. The steady rhythm, the quiet strength. She tightened her hold on Lily's hand just slightly, then relaxed again. "I will," she said. This time, there was no doubt in her voice. And for the first time since everything began, the future did not feel like something she had to fight alone. The light outside the window had shifted by the time Emily noticed it. The sharp brightness of the afternoon had softened into something warmer. Time had passed without her measuring it. That alone felt unfamiliar. Lily stirred again, this time with a small stretch that seemed stronger than before. Emily leaned in immediately, her face close, her voice gentle. "Hey you," she whispered. "Look at you." Lily's eyes opened briefly, more alert this time. Not just a flicker, a quiet awareness. Emily felt something inside her chest loosen in a way she had been holding back all day. She smiled without realizing it. A real smile. One that did not feel forced or fragile. Daniel noticed it from across the room. He did not interrupt. He simply watched, as if that moment mattered more than anything else he could say. Emily adjusted the blanket again, her movements slower now, more certain. "She is different," she said quietly. Not to anyone in particular, just stating what she could see. Daniel stood and walked a few steps closer, stopping at a respectful distance beside the bed. He looked down at Lily, then back at Emily. "She is getting what she needed," he said. Emily nodded. "And what she should have had earlier," she added softly. There was no anger in her tone, just a quiet truth. Daniel did not disagree. The silence between them held something deeper now. Not just gratitude. Understanding. The door opened gently once more. Dr. Lawson entered, his expression calm but satisfied. He glanced at the monitor, then at Lily. "She is doing very well," he said. "We can begin removing the support gradually." Emily straightened slightly in her chair. "Is that safe?" she asked. The doctor gave a reassuring nod. "She is ready," he said. "Her body is responding on its own now." The nurse followed behind him, adjusting the equipment with careful hands. The small mask was removed slowly. Emily held her breath for a second, watching, waiting. Lily's chest continued to rise and fall. Steady, natural, unassisted. Emily let out a soft breath that carried relief deeper than before. It was no longer hope. It was real. "There we go," the nurse said gently. "She is doing it all by herself." Emily reached forward, her fingers brushing lightly against Lily's cheek. "Warm, calm, present. You did it," she whispered. Her voice trembled slightly this time, but not from fear. From something fuller. Something she had been holding back all day. Daniel watched the scene quietly. His expression softened in a way that was almost unnoticeable unless someone looked closely. He turned slightly, giving them space again, but he did not leave. Not yet. Dr. Lawson made a few final notes on his tablet. "We will keep her for observation a little longer," he said. "But everything looks excellent." Emily nodded. "Thank you," she said again. This time the words carried more weight, more meaning. The doctor gave a small nod and stepped out, leaving the room calm once more. Emily leaned back in her chair, her body finally releasing the last layers of tension it had been holding. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, just long enough to feel the quiet settle fully around her. When she opened them again, she looked at Daniel. "I do not think I will ever forget this," she said. Her voice was steady, honest. Daniel met her gaze without hesitation. "You do not have to," he replied. "Just remember that it can be different." Emily studied him for a moment. The words stayed with her. "It can be different." She looked back at Lily, her expression softening once more. "Maybe it already is," she said quietly. And for the first time, she believed it. The room no longer felt like a place of urgency. It felt like a place where something had been restored. Emily shifted carefully in her chair, her eyes never straying far from Lily. Each small movement her daughter made felt like proof that the worst had passed. Not completely behind them, but no longer ahead of them either. Lily let out a soft sound, almost like a quiet hum, and moved her tiny hand again, this time with more intention. Emily leaned forward, her expression soft and attentive. "Hey, sweetheart," she whispered. "You are really showing off now." There was warmth in her voice that had not been there before. Not because she had not loved her child enough, but because fear had finally loosened its grip. Daniel stood near the doorway now. He had not announced his movement. He simply shifted positions, as if preparing to leave without interrupting what mattered. Emily noticed anyway. She looked up, her gaze following him. "You are leaving," she said quietly. It was not a question. Daniel paused for a brief moment. He turned slightly back toward her. "You do not need me here anymore," he said. His tone remained calm. "Certain." Emily held his gaze. For a second, she did not know how to respond. The room felt different with that possibility. Not empty, just changed. "I never really needed you here," she said slowly. Then she shook her head. "But I am glad you were." The honesty in her voice carried something deeper than gratitude. Daniel gave a small nod. He seemed to understand exactly what she meant without needing anything more. Emily looked down at Lily again, then back at him. "Will I see you again?" she asked. The question surprised even her. It was not something she had planned to say. It simply came out. Daniel did not answer immediately. He studied her for a moment, as if weighing something unseen. "That depends," he said finally. Emily frowned slightly. "On what?" she asked. Daniel's expression remained composed, but there was a subtle shift in his eyes. Something more personal. "On whether you need me to," he replied. Emily blinked at that. The answer was simple, but it carried a meaning she could not fully define. She looked away briefly, then back at Lily. "I think today was enough," she said quietly. "More than enough." Daniel nodded once. Not disappointed, not relieved, just accepting. "Then that is how it should be," he said. He reached into his jacket pocket again and placed something small on the nearby table. Not the same card as before. This one was different. Plain. Simple. "If that ever changes," he added, "you know how to reach someone who will answer." Emily glanced at the card but did not pick it up right away. She looked at him instead, trying to understand something that did not follow the usual rules of the world she knew. "You make it sound easy," she said. Daniel gave a faint, almost thoughtful smile. "It is not," he replied, "but it can be simple." The distinction lingered in the air. Emily nodded slowly, as if committing that idea to memory. Daniel stepped back toward the door. His presence, which had quietly filled the room, began to withdraw just as gently. He did not rush. He did not linger. He simply moved with the same calm certainty he had shown from the beginning. Before stepping out, he paused one last time. His gaze moved to Lily, then to Emily. "Take care of her," he said. Emily nodded without hesitation. I will, she replied. This time, the words carried strength, not just promise. Daniel gave a final nod, then stepped out into the hallway. The door closed softly behind him. Emily sat there for a moment, listening to the quiet that followed. It felt different now. Not empty, not uncertain, just still. She reached over and picked up the card he had left behind. Her fingers traced its edges briefly before setting it back down. Then she looked at Lily again. The steady rhythm, the peaceful breath, the quiet strength. Emily leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. We are going to be okay, she said. And for the first time, she did not question it. The room felt quieter after the door closed behind him. Not empty, just different. Emily sat still for a moment, her eyes resting on the space where Daniel had stood. It was strange how someone could arrive without warning and leave behind something that stayed. She shifted her attention back to Lily. That was where everything mattered now. Lily's breathing remained steady, soft, natural. Each rise and fall felt like a quiet reassurance that no longer needed to be questioned. Emily adjusted the blanket again, her movements gentle and unhurried. You scared me today, she whispered. Her voice carried a softness that came from relief rather than fear. Lily stirred slightly, her tiny fingers curling again as if responding. Emily smiled faintly. It was a small smile, but it stayed. A few minutes passed before the door opened again. The nurse stepped in with a clipboard, her expression calm and warm. We are going to run one more check before discharge, she said. Everything looks very good. Emily nodded, her attention still focused on Lily. Thank you, she replied. The words felt easier now, less heavy. The nurse moved efficiently, checking the monitor and making a few notes. You will be able to take her home soon, she added. Just a few more minutes. Home. The words settled differently this time. It did not feel distant anymore. It felt close, real. Emily leaned back slightly in her chair, letting the idea sink in. She had walked into that day unsure how she would make it through. Now she was being told she could leave with everything intact. It felt almost unreal. The nurse finished her checks and gave a reassuring nod before stepping out again. The room returned to its steady rhythm. Emily exhaled slowly. She reached over and picked up the small card Daniel had left behind. Her fingers traced the edges carefully. It was simple. No name. Just a number. But it carried more weight than anything else she had held that day. She turned it over once, then placed it back down on the table. Not out of hesitation. Out of understanding. It was not something she needed right now. Lily made another small sound, softer than before. Emily leaned forward immediately, her attention shifting back without effort. I am here, she said quietly. Lily's eyes opened for a brief moment. Longer this time. Clearer. Emily felt her chest tighten, but not from fear. From something deeper. Something steady. That is right, she whispered. You are okay. Lily's gaze drifted slightly before her eyes closed again, settling into a calm rest. Emily stayed close, her hand resting gently against Lily's arm. She did not need to hold tightly anymore. Just being there was enough. A soft knock sounded at the door once more. Dr. Lawson entered, reviewing the chart in his hand. Everything is stable, he said. You are cleared to go home. Emily looked up, the words landing fully this time. We can leave? She asked. The doctor nodded with a small smile. Yes, he said. She will continue to recover well at home. Just follow the care instructions we will provide. Emily nodded slowly. The reality of it settled in layers. Thank you, she said again. This time, it carried something final. The doctor gave a reassuring nod and handed her a small folder before stepping out. Emily looked down at the papers briefly, then back at Lily. The room that had held so much uncertainty now felt like a place she could leave behind. Not because it had not mattered, but because it had done what it needed to do. She stood carefully, adjusting her hold as she lifted Lily into her arms. The weight felt familiar again. Right. Lily shifted slightly, settling. Against her. Calm. Safe. Emily held her close, her chin resting lightly against the top of Lily's head. We are going home, she whispered. The words felt real. Solid. She glanced once more at the small table. The card remained where she had placed it. Quiet. Unassuming. She reached out, picked it up, and slipped it gently into her pocket. Not as a need. As a reminder. Then she turned toward the door. And for the first time that day, she walked forward without hesitation. The hallway outside the clinic felt quieter than Emily expected. Not silent, but calm in a way that did not press against her. She walked slowly, careful with each step, Lily resting securely against her chest. The automatic doors opened as she approached, letting in the soft glow of early evening light. It was warmer now. The sharp edge of the day had softened. Emily paused just outside the entrance. She did not rush to leave. For a moment, she simply stood there, holding Lily close, feeling the steady rise and fall beneath her hand. It was real. It had held. A black sedan waited near the curb, just like before. The same quiet presence. The same stillness that did not demand attention but offered it anyway. The driver stepped forward and opened the door without a word. Emily hesitated briefly, then nodded in quiet acknowledgement. She stepped inside, settling carefully into the seat while adjusting Lily's blanket. The door closed gently behind her. The car moved forward smoothly, merging into the evening traffic without hesitation. The city looked different now. The same streets, the same buildings, but everything felt less heavy, as if something invisible had shifted. Emily looked out the window for a moment, watching the passing lights blur into soft reflections. Then she looked down at Lily again. "We made it," she whispered. Her voice carried quiet certainty. Lily remained asleep, her small body relaxed in a way that spoke of comfort rather than exhaustion. Emily leaned her head back slightly, letting the motion of the car settle her thoughts. The events of the day moved through her mind in fragments. The clinic, the rejection, the voice that had said no without hesitation. Then the moment that changed everything. A stranger who had not stayed a stranger for long. She reached into her pocket and felt the edge of the card. She did not take it out. She did not need to. Just knowing it was there felt enough. The car slowed as it turned into a quieter street. Familiar. The buildings were smaller here. Worn in places, but lived in. Real. The driver pulled to a stop in front of a modest apartment building. He stepped out and opened her door again. "We are here," he said politely. Emily nodded and stepped out, holding Lily carefully as she adjusted her balance. The evening air felt gentle against her skin. Not cold, not harsh, just present. She looked up at the building for a moment. It had not changed, but she had, in ways she could not fully explain yet. "Thank you," she said softly to the driver. He gave a small respectful nod before returning to the car. Emily watched as it pulled away, disappearing into the quiet street as if it had never been there at all. She turned toward the entrance and walked inside. The hallway lights flickered slightly as she passed. Familiar sounds echoed faintly from behind closed doors. A television. A distant conversation. Life moving forward in its usual way. Emily reached her apartment door and paused briefly. She shifted Lily gently in her arms, making sure she was still comfortable. Then she unlocked the door and stepped inside. The space was small, simple, but it was theirs. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it for just a second. Not from exhaustion, from release. The weight of the day finally settled into something she could carry. She walked slowly to the couch and sat down, holding Lily close. The quiet inside the apartment wrapped around them. Not empty, not lonely, just still. Emily looked down at her daughter, brushing a soft strand of hair away from her forehead. "We are home," she whispered. And this time, the words felt like more than a place. They felt like something they had held on to and found again. The apartment remained quiet long after Emily sat down. Not the kind of silence that felt empty. The kind that allowed her to hear every small, steady breath Lily took. She stayed on the couch, not moving much, as if the moment needed to settle fully before she could trust it. Lily shifted slightly in her arms, letting out a soft sound that felt almost like a sigh of relief. Emily looked down immediately, her expression soft and attentive. "Hey," she whispered. "You are home now." The words felt different here. Not just something to say, something real. Lily's fingers curled gently against the fabric of Emily's shirt, holding on without effort. Emily adjusted her hold carefully, making sure she was comfortable. The familiar surroundings seemed smaller than before. The worn couch, the small table by the window, the quiet hum of an old refrigerator in the corner. Nothing had changed, but everything felt different. Emily leaned back slightly, letting her shoulders relax into the cushions. The exhaustion she had pushed aside all day finally made itself known. Not overwhelming, just present. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, listening. No machines, no voices, just Lily's breathing. Steady. Enough. A soft knock at the door broke the quiet. Emily opened her eyes slowly, her body tensing for a brief second before settling again. She shifted Lily carefully in her arms and stood up. The knock came again. Not loud, not impatient, just there. Emily walked to the door and opened it slightly. Mrs. Turner stood in the hallway, her expression concerned but gentle. "Emily," she said softly, "I saw you come in. I wanted to check on you." Emily nodded, stepping back just enough to let her neighbor see Lily. "We are okay," she said. The words came easily now. Mrs. Turner looked at the baby, her face softening with visible relief. "Oh, thank goodness," she said. "I was worried when I did not see you this morning." Emily gave a small smile. "It was a long day," she admitted. Mrs. Turner nodded, understanding more than Emily needed to explain. "Do you need anything?" she asked. "I made some soup earlier." Emily hesitated for a brief moment, not out of pride, just adjusting to the idea that it was all right to accept help. "That would be nice," she said quietly. Mrs. Turner smiled warmly. "I will bring it right over," she said before turning back down the hallway. Emily closed the door gently and returned to the couch. She sat down again, holding Lily close. The small apartment no longer felt like a place she had to defend alone. It felt like something that could hold more than just survival. Lily stirred again, her eyes opening slightly before settling back into a calm rest. Emily brushed her fingers lightly across Lily's cheek. "You have people looking out for you," she whispered. "More than you know." Her voice carried something new now, not just relief, a quiet belief. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the card Daniel had given her. She looked at it for a moment, turning it over between her fingers. Still simple, still quiet. But now it felt like more than a lifeline. It felt like proof that something beyond her small world had reached in when she needed it most. Emily placed the card gently on the table beside her. Not hidden, not held tightly, just there. A reminder. She leaned back again, her hand resting softly over Lily. The evening light filtered through the window, casting a warm glow across the room. Everything felt still, not uncertain, not fragile, just calm. Emily closed her eyes for a brief moment, letting the quiet settle around her. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long while, she did not feel like she had to face it alone. The night settled quietly around the apartment, wrapping the small space in a calm that felt earned. Emily had not moved much from the couch, but something inside her had shifted completely. The fear that had followed her all day no longer lingered in the corners. It had been replaced by something softer, something steady. Lily slept peacefully against her, her tiny breaths even and untroubled. Emily watched her for a long moment, memorizing the rhythm as if it were something sacred, not because she was afraid it would disappear, but because she understood now how precious it was. The soft knock returned, lighter this time. Emily stood carefully and opened the door. Mrs. Turner handed her a warm bowl with a gentle smile. "You need to eat," she said kindly. Emily nodded, accepting it without hesitation. "Thank you," she replied. The words carried quiet sincerity. Mrs. Turner glanced at Lily and smiled again before stepping away, leaving Emily with a warmth that was not just from the soup. Emily closed the door and returned to the couch. She set the bowl on the table beside the card, the two small objects sitting side by side. One from someone familiar, one from someone who had appeared only once. Both had changed her day. Emily picked up the spoon and took a slow bite. The warmth spread through her, grounding her in the present moment. She had not realized how long it had been since she last felt something so simple without worry attached to it. She glanced at the card again. It remained quiet, unassuming, but it carried a presence she could not ignore. She did not reach for it this time. She did not need to. Instead, she looked down at Lily and smiled faintly. "You are the reason," she whispered. "You always were." Lily stirred slightly, her small hand pressing gently against Emily as if in response. Emily placed her hand over it, her touch light but certain. Outside, the distant sounds of the city continued as they always had. Cars passing, voices fading in and out, life moving forward. But inside the apartment, something had changed in a way that would not simply pass. Emily leaned back, her body finally allowing itself to rest fully. The exhaustion no longer felt heavy. It felt like something she could set down. She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again, looking around the small space she called home. It was still modest, still worn in places, but it no longer felt like a place she was barely holding together. It felt like a beginning, a quiet one, but real. She reached over and turned off the small lamp beside her. The room dimmed, leaving only the soft glow from the window. She shifted slightly, making sure Lily was comfortable, then rested her head gently against the back of the couch. "We are going to be all right," she said softly. The words no longer carried doubt. They carried truth. Somewhere across the city, a man who had chosen to stop instead of walk away continued with his life as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But for Emily, that moment would never be ordinary. It had changed the way she saw the world, not as something that always turned its back, but as something that, sometimes, chose to see. She closed her eyes once more, her hand resting lightly over Lily, her breathing matching the calm rhythm she had feared losing. The night held them quietly, and for the first time in a long time, there was nothing left to fear, only something to carry forward. A small, steady reminder that even in the hardest moments, kindness could arrive without warning. And when it did, it could change everything.